Have you ever noticed that when someone sets themselves against a chosen one, strange things begin to happen? It's almost as if heaven itself steps in and says, "Enough." Chosen ones carry a divine covering, and anyone who dares to oppose them often faces consequences they never saw coming. Today we're going to uncover 9 scary things that happen to the enemies of chosen ones. Before we dive in, let me ask you, have you ever experienced a moment when someone wronged you, yet somehow their plans backfired? If yes, drop a comment below and say, "That's me," because your story might just encourage someone else who's watching. Now let's get into it. The first thing that happens is confusion. When enemies try to plot against a chosen one, God scrambles their plans. What seemed like a strong strategy suddenly falls apart. Just look at the story of Joseph in Genesis. His brothers sold him into slavery, but God turned their betrayal into his pathway to the throne. Enemies think they're working against you, but in reality, they're working for God's plan in your life. The second scary thing is loss of peace. When someone rises against a chosen one, their spirit is disturbed. They cannot rest. They cannot sleep in peace. They're haunted by guilt, anxiety, and unease. Why? Because the Spirit of God convicts those who harm His children. The third thing is exposure. Enemies of chosen ones cannot hide forever. Their schemes eventually come to light. God has a way of pulling back the curtain and revealing what was done in darkness. If you've ever seen a hidden enemy exposed right before your eyes, comment below. God always reveals. Fourth, they experience unexpected setbacks. What they tried to build for themselves crumbles. The positions they tried to take away from the chosen one suddenly slip through their fingers. This is God showing that no one can block what He has ordained. The fifth scary thing is that their own traps backfire. Psalm 7:15 says, "Whoever digs a hole and scoops it out falls into the pit they have made." That means whatever harm your enemies plot for you often circles back and hits them instead. Sixth, isolation. Enemies of chosen ones often lose the very people they relied on. Friends leave. Allies disappear. Their circle turns cold. Why? Because when someone stands against God's chosen, even human connections begin to fall apart. The seventh is spiritual torment. Enemies of chosen ones are often plagued by fear. They start to sense the weight of divine judgment. Their dreams are unsettled. Their spirit is restless. They can't shake the awareness that they touched something sacred. Eighth, their resources dry up. Sometimes the money, influence, or power that enemies relied on begins to vanish. What they thought would keep them strong fails them, because God Himself begins to strip away the false foundations they trusted. Now let me ask you, which one of these 9 things have you seen play out in your own life? Comment below and share, because your testimony will encourage someone else who is going through the same battle. Chosen one, let's go deeper. Because when God says, "Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm," Psalm 105:15, He wasn't speaking casually. He was drawing a clear line. Anyone who crosses it faces consequences beyond human understanding. Let's slow down and walk through these truths with the weight they deserve. When confusion comes upon the enemies of chosen ones, it doesn't just mean they get a little disorganized. It means every plan they tried to execute starts to crumble like sand slipping through fingers. The more they fight, the more tangled they become. Do you remember the story of Pharaoh's army in Exodus? They pursued Israel into the Red Sea, and suddenly their chariot wheels jammed. That wasn't an accident. That was God Himself bringing confusion. And the same God who did that is still working for you. If you've ever seen your enemy's plan unravel, drop in the comments. God is still the same today. Loss of peace is the next one. Let's sit with that for a moment, because peace is priceless. You can't buy it, you can't fake it, and when it's gone, life feels unbearable. When enemies harm chosen ones, their peace evaporates. They toss and turn at night. Their spirit knows they crossed a line. Remember King Saul after he turned against David? The Bible says the Spirit of the Lord departed from him, and torment came instead. Chosen one? That is a scary place to be, and that's what happens to those who set themselves against God's people. Now let's talk about exposure. This one is powerful, because God has a way of shining light where people thought darkness could cover them. Every whisper, every lie, every secret plot eventually gets revealed. Think about Haman in the book of Esther. He built gallows for Mordecai, but God flipped the script. Haman's plan was exposed, and he fell into his own trap. If you've ever had someone's true colors revealed right before your eyes, write in the comments. God always uncovers the truth. Setbacks come next. What's meant to harm you ends up haunting them. They try to push you down, but instead their own progress collapses. Why? Because chosen ones walk under an open heaven. No enemy can close what God has opened. Joseph was thrown in a pit and sold into slavery. then locked in prison, but each setback just prepared him for a greater comeback. And the enemies who thought they buried him were forced to bow before the very man they tried to destroy. Now let's talk about backfired traps. This is one of the scariest things. Psalm 9:15 says, "The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden." Chosen one, when your enemies set traps for you, they're digging their own grave without realizing it. It's the law of divine justice. What they meant for you comes back on them multiplied. Isolation is another terrifying reality. Enemies think they have allies. They think they're backed by strong connections. But when they rise against the chosen, watch how quickly those connections dry up. The very people who cheered them on will suddenly vanish. Their support system falls apart. Why? Because no one wants to stand on sinking sand when God's judgment starts to shake the ground. Spiritual torment is something money can't buy your way out of. The enemies of chosen ones carry invisible battles in their minds. Fear grips them. Guilt whispers in their ears. Nightmares chase them. Just like Pilate's wife, who was tormented in a dream about Jesus, the enemies of chosen ones cannot escape the weight of what they've done. They are haunted by the knowledge that they picked the wrong fight. Their resources begin to dry up. The wealth they trusted fades. The influence they boasted about weakens. Their health may even deteriorate because they lifted their hand against someone God himself had marked. Remember Nebuchadnezzar? He was the most powerful king of his time. But his arrogance against God turned him into a beast crawling on the ground. That's what happens when resources are stripped away by heaven. And finally, the scariest of all, divine judgment. Sometimes it comes quickly. Other times it builds slowly, like a storm gathering strength. But when it arrives, there is no escape. The Red Sea swallowed Pharaoh's army. The fire consumed Sodom. Ananias and Sapphira fell in the New Testament for lying to the Spirit. This is not superstition, it's the justice of God. He protects his own fiercely. Chosen one, this should strengthen your heart today. Stop worrying about who's plotting against you. Stop losing sleep over their gossip, their jealousy, their attacks. Because the truth is, you don't fight those battles. God does. And he fights them perfectly. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 9 truths hit your spirit the hardest today? Which one feels like something you've lived through? Share your answer in the comments. Your testimony will remind someone else that God still defends his chosen ones. And let's seal this moment in prayer. Father, I thank you for covering me with your protection. I release every enemy into your hands. I will not fear, I will not fight in my own strength, because I know you are my defender. Turn every trap into testimony. Let every setback become my stepping stone. And let my life be a witness of your justice and your mercy. Chosen one, you are untouchable in the hands of God. Rising. Chosen one, let's talk about exposure once more, because this one is so important. When enemies come against you, they often believe their secrets are hidden. They think their whispers in the dark can't be heard. They think their lies will never be uncovered. But God is not mocked, and his word says in Luke 12:2, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." When someone rises against the chosen one, they step into a spotlight they cannot escape. Maybe you've seen it. Someone tried to betray you, but suddenly their mask slipped. Suddenly the truth about who they were was revealed. And isn't it amazing how God times these revelations? He doesn't always expose them immediately, but when he does, it's in a way that no one can deny. Comment below if you've ever had a moment like this. God revealed the truth. But exposure doesn't come alone. With it comes setbacks. The enemies of chosen ones often think they're moving forward when in reality, they're walking backward. Every step they take against you takes them further from their own destiny. Their promotions fall through. Their opportunities vanish. Their reputation begins to decay, and they can't understand why everything they touch is falling apart. Think about Pharaoh again. Egypt was the most powerful nation of its time. Pharaoh thought he had all the strength in the world, but every time he hardened his heart against Moses, his kingdom suffered setback after setback. Plagues, destruction, loss of resources, until the power he once boasted about lay in ruins. That's what happens when enemies refuse to back down from fighting a chosen one. And then there's the backfired trap. This one is both terrifying and poetic. Because, chosen one, your enemies sometimes dig pits for you, but those pits swallow them instead. They weave nets, but they get tangled in their own webs. This isn't just biblical history, it's happening even today. Look at Haman in the book of Esther. He had wealth, influence, and favor with the king. Yet his pride led him to build gallows to hang Mordecai, a chosen one. What he didn't know was that the very gallows he built for another became his own undoing. God turned the plot upside down. And I want you to hear this clearly. The same God who reversed Haman's plot is still reversing traps today. Maybe you've been in a season where it feels like people are plotting behind your back. Maybe they've whispered lies, tried to damage your reputation, or work to block your progress. But let me encourage you, those traps will not work. In fact, they may end up exposing the enemy's true heart more than yours. That's why Psalm 37:12-13 says, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming."